Welcome to part 2 of our 4-part series on anxiety, how to help children and teens cope with worry. We are Vicky and Ashley from the Toronto District School Board Psychology staff. This webinar will review some key strategies that caregivers and educators can use to support children and teens with worry. We will focus on 3 strategies or skills. 1, listening and empathizing. 2, supporting children or teens who may not be able or ready to put words to their feelings. And 3, problem solving. Of note, this is part 2 of the Anxiety 101 mini-series. Part 1 reviewed what anxiety is and how it can show up in children and teens. Parts 2 and 3 will focus on coping strategies, and part 4 will focus on COVID-specific concerns and ways to support your child during this time. So our first recommendation is to listen and accept. This means providing children with a safe space to be able to talk and be heard without jumping to reassurance or pushing to problem solve. We want to invite caregivers and educators to simply listen to the child or teen's concerns and accept that they are very real concerns for them. This is really hard to do. It may come as no surprise that most caregivers want their children to be happy. If our child comes to us with a worry or a concern, our immediate response may be to reassure them or to minimize the issue so that a simple resolution can do the trick. While intentions are good, in doing so we may inadvertently misread the situation or dismiss our children's feelings, leaving them to feel that we simply don't get it. Offering quick solutions can also take away our children's ability to exercise their own problem-solving capabilities. So step 1, spend time listening and accepting their point of view. Here is an example of what listening and accepting can sound like. The teen says, "I didn't get invited to Justine's party. It's because no one really likes me or likes hanging around with me." Her caregiver, who I'm sure is feeling pretty upset herself at seeing this teen so sad, and likely wants to reply by reassuring her that she has plenty of friends, instead replies with, "It hurt that you didn't get invited to the party because you were excited about going. I'd feel pretty disappointed too." This may help to put her teen's experience into words by labeling the emotion and validating the reasons behind it, leaving the teen to feel heard, understood, and as though her feelings are okay. But what about the instances where your child or teen is not talking about their worries, but your spidey sense is telling you something is wrong? There are some key strategies we can use in advance of our children being able to talk about their worries that may help them to still feel supported. For one, it is important to try not to personalize their silence. There are a number of reasons that children or teens may not be speaking about their worries, like not having the words, not having the emotional insight to understand what they're feeling, or feeling too emotional to access the part of their brains that can make sense of their feelings. If this is a one-off concern, we may just let it pass. However, if you are finding that it is persistent, you may want to talk to other adults in their lives, like teachers or coaches, to understand if there are any particular stressors, like big tests or increased pressures at practice, that may be contributing to their overall well-being. Some other things you can do are being physically present, that is, using nonverbal cues to communicate that you are open and available to talk about whatever is concerning them. For younger children, this may look like getting down to their level and being physically beside them. For teens, it may be sitting beside them, avoiding direct eye contact, or if they are in their rooms, checking in on them every so often. You may also try to take a guess at what might be worrying them. This can be particularly helpful for children or teens who may not be able to place what that icky feeling is or why they are feeling it. You offering some insights may help them to form their own understanding of the problem. You can also let your child or teen know that you respect their need for space and time, and that you are open and available to talk when they are ready. This will help children to feel it is okay to take time and space to think about things, while also knowing that they have someone there to listen when they're ready. And finally, doing something fun together can be a healthy distraction that can help shift the feelings in the moment. Sometimes getting unstuck from the worry can enable children to think and talk about it in a way that they are unable to when they're overcome by the emotion. Some other things we can do or be aware of that can support children even when they're not able or ready to talk about their worries are being aware of situations that may make it easier for them to talk. For example, a lot of parents note that the car is a safe space that can elicit conversation. For teens, not having to look their caregivers in the eye may help them to feel more at ease and able to converse. For younger children, before bed can be a time where they feel safe and comfortable and as though they have your undivided attention. Parents may also think about creative ways to discuss feelings. Feelings charades, for example, is a great way to explore many different emotions and events or situations that elicit these emotions. Additional ways are through reading books, like the Feelings book, or The Color Monster, or watching movies, like Inside Out. Finally, remembering that one of the key ways caregivers can teach children is through modeling. Talking about your own feelings can be a helpful guide for children in being able to talk about their own feelings. For example, you may say, "Man, I'm feeling pretty worried about my big presentation tomorrow because a lot of people I respect will be there, and it is important for me to feel I did a good job." Modeling helps to build children's brains by strengthening the connection between the emotion and thinking center of their brains.
Ashley's spoken about ways to encourage your child to talk about what they're feeling. Now I'm going to spend some time talking about a few strategies that you might use during the conversation. First, let's focus on acknowledging their perspective and why it's important. We want kids and teens to learn to manage strong feelings like anxiety in a healthy way. To do this, it helps for them to understand what they're feeling and where their feeling is coming from. Pretty often, children and teens, and also adults, struggle to know what they're feeling. They might feel just kind of off or yucky and not really be sure why. And oftentimes, they might feel like their bodies and their actions are out of control. So adults can help by doing things like listening to their child's experiences, labeling their emotions, helping them understand what might be causing their emotions, and acknowledging their feelings by saying that, I get it. I get what you're going through. I get why you feel the way that you do. Again, the big idea here is that by helping them understand their emotions, you're helping them be able to respond in a healthy way. Now, obviously, there's going to be times where it'll be really hard to see your child's perspective. Their emotion might seem really absurd or out of proportion to the situation. So, for example, if there's a child who's a really excellent basketball player and she's really worried that she's going to lose the game for her team, the worry to you might feel really out of proportion. And from that, you might feel an urge to say, just calm down. You're worried for nothing. You're overreacting. It's going to be fine. But it's important to remember that her emotion really is her emotion. She's worried and it's quite real for her. And if we dismiss children's emotions, we miss an opportunity to help them kind of recognize what they're feeling and gain a new perspective or a new ability to cope. So once you've acknowledged your child's emotion and they feel heard and understood, then it might be time to kind of shift a little bit and invite them to think about the situation in another way. And we're going to focus on this idea of a balance between acknowledging where your child's coming from. We can think of this as emotion mind, focusing on their feelings. And gently introducing another way to think about the situation. We can think about this as rational mind or kind of thinking the situation through. And to demonstrate kind of what this looks like, I'm going to use an adult example. So I want you to imagine that there's a deadline coming up. It can be anything, something at work, doing your taxes. It could be dealing with the mountains of laundry and dishes that seem to be constantly growing. And imagine you're talking to a friend about it. So if they're focused too much on emotion mind, they might say something like, "Oh my gosh, you're never going to make it. There's so little time. I totally get why you're worried. Why did you commit to that? You'll never get it all done." And when somebody's too focused on emotion mind, it can leave you kind of walking away and feeling more worried. So now let's think about what it would look like if they're spending too much time in rational mind. They might say something like, "I don't really understand what you're worried about. That's not a big problem. You'll be fine. You're always stressing out about things and complaining, but then it ends up okay. You should see what I have to do this weekend." So too much rational mind or too much kind of shifting your perspective might leave you feeling unheard or dismissed. And oftentimes you might not feel like you want to really talk to the person about the situation again. So what would be the middle ground? A little bit of emotion mind and a little bit of rational mind. It might sound something like, "Oh, I get it. Deadlines are super stressful, especially when you have so much other stuff going on. I also know, though, that you're a really organized person who makes a mean to-do list and you're pretty good at accomplishing things under pressure." So here, you feel like the person kind of gets your side of things, but also they might have made you feel a little bit better about the situation or taken a slightly different perspective on it. So what does this look like for kids? Let's imagine a situation where it's the end of the school day and your child said hi to their best friend, but the friend didn't respond and just sort of ran quickly down the hall and out of the school. So now your child's coming home and saying again, you hear this often, she hates me, she doesn't like me anymore, I don't have any friends. So if you're responding and you're really heavy on emotion mind, you might say something like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened. I'm so sorry. That's terrible of her. What do you think you did recently that made her upset? Of course you don't want to go back to school anymore. Who would want to after that? Your child might feel understood, but they probably feel a little bit more worried about the situation. Now imagine you're too much in rational mind. You might say something like, ugh, get over it. There's lots of other kids in your class. I'm sure they want to be friends with you. That might be true that there's lots of other kids in the class, but your child probably feels a little bit unheard and maybe that their feelings are being dismissed. So now what does that look like if there's a balance? You might say something like, I can see why you'd feel worried that your friend is mad at you. It's hard when you think somebody's mad at you. I wonder if there's any other reasons that she might not have had time to talk yesterday. I know she often has to rush away to pick up her brother after school or to get to soccer practice. Maybe she was just running late and rushing. So here you're having a little bit of acknowledging emotions and a little bit of sharing another perspective. Another thing that you can do after you've kind of acknowledged your child's perspective and where they're coming from is to teach them problem-solving skills and to join them in problem solving. This is a thing we kind of do second nature as adults. But we want to make it really explicit when we're talking to kids and teenagers to kind of walk them through the steps and understand, how we go about solving problems and figuring out what's the best way to act in different situations. So we can think of it as, steps 1 to 4. So first we're going to identify the problem. Then we're going to brainstorm all the things that we could do. Then we're going to think about a solution, which one would be the best one. And then we're going to check in a little bit later and see, how did it go? And if it didn't go well, what's something that could have been done differently? The idea here is that this is kind of a collaborative process. So rather than explaining them or telling them, you're kind of coming together to attack the problem and figure out a way to solve this or to solve it. The idea here is that you want them to learn the skill of problem solving. And when you're brainstorming ideas, you really want to catch a wide net. So no idea is a bad idea when you're brainstorming. You're just listening all the possible solutions. And then later you guys can kind of go through together to think about the pros and cons of the different options.
Here are a few resources to help you learn more about how to help your child cope with feelings of worry. For more details about each one, please see the end of part 1 of this webinar series.